On his way home to avoid the increasingly severe floodwaters, the man unexpectedly spotted a small deer standing silently by the roadside. The raging floodwaters swept through, almost completely submerging the road, while the young deer could only huddle together amidst the perilous scene. Perhaps it had been separated from its mother earlier, hungry, cold, and completely disoriented in the harsh natural environment. The animal's fur was soaking wet. Its small legs trembled incessantly, and its eyes were filled with fear and despair. It sat motionless, as if resigned to its fate, oblivious to the rising water all around it. Seeing the tiny creature, the man immediately stopped the car and hurriedly got out in the heavy rain. He gently approached, softly stroked the fawn to reassure it, and then carefully cradled it in his arms. The man didn't know exactly what to do with the wild animal, but he understood that abandoning it meant its death. Without further hesitation, he decided to postpone his journey home to find a safer place for the deer. Holding the animal close to his chest, the man waded through the flooded road and then walked a considerable distance towards the forest, located on higher ground. Despite his clothes being covered in mud and soaked with cold rainwater, he didn't complain or show any intention of giving up. Once in a dry spot, the man gently placed the deer down on the grass and stepped back, hoping it would find its way home on its own. But then something unexpected happened. The deer didn't run into the forest as he expected. It stood still for just a few seconds, silently watching the man's back as he turned and walked away. Immediately afterwards, the little deer hurried after, its clumsy but determined steps touching the hearts of all who watched. It seemed to fear that if it delayed even a little longer, the person who had saved it would disappear forever. The man heard footsteps behind him, so he stopped and turned around, his face showing surprise and confusion. He never expected that after such a brief encounter, the little deer would place its complete trust in him. The animal stood silently before him, its eyes glistening as if pleading desperately not to be abandoned in the strange forest. That look in her eyes made the man's heart sink, for he understood that this little creature was incredibly lonely. After a few minutes of thought, he decided to carry the deer back to the car and take it home to continue caring for it. Deer are very sensitive animals, and young deer often become very frightened when they are separated from their mothers. But if they sense gentleness and no threat, they will gradually form a strong bond. There are encounters that last only a few minutes, but are enough to change the fate of a tiny life. Kindness sometimes not only saves a life, but also gives a young heart the belief that good things still exist in this world.